Welcome to a special edition of JohnnyVTV Live here on this Saturday, October 29th. Apologies for interrupting the World Series as well as some college football. Had to bring on JC Allen from the Pewter Report. How you doing, man? How's everything going?
Doing great, man. Happy to be here to chop it up, get into some of this Bucs talk. I don't know how many people want to hear some Bucs talk if you're in Tampa right now, but happy to be here, chop it up with you. It's been a while, so always a pleasure.
Yeah, man. Listen, we haven't spoken in a while, so I'm glad that we were able to get in touch, I guess the word is. And as you said, man, there's a lot going on in the NFC South this year. I can't even say it. It's way different than previous years where I guess there's a lot more parity in the NFL, but at the same time, the product that's been being put out in front of us is some of the worst football I've seen, quite honestly, in maybe the entire time I've been watching football. And I've been watching football for well over a decade, over 15 years. And I can honestly say this season has just not been good and large. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, we're looking at a situation, especially in the NFC. I think the AFC is kind of, you expected the Bills are still on top, although the Jets are right behind them. The Chiefs are still on top. The Ravens, that's not a team that you would have thought. Titans. But you flip over to the NFC, and it's just Eagles are undefeated. Giants are 6-1. The Seahawks are the current NFC West leaders right now. The Vikings are up over the Packers, who are 3-4. The Falcons are actually in the lead right now for the division based on various tiebreakers and could take a stranglehold on that. Not a stranglehold, of course, but could go 4-4 and be in sole possession of that. Regardless of what happens, if the Falcons lose, if the Panthers win, Falcons, Panthers, Buccaneers are all 3-5, and parity is an understatement. I feel like this year it's just been absolutely insane. And Tom Brady said it best a couple of weeks ago, and you just said it yourself. Bad football, a lot of bad football being played from quarterbacks to, skill position players. And then obviously the refs have just been horrendous again this year. You're muted.
I'm on mute. You just hit the nail on the head. You have teams that are projected top 10 lottery picks. Seattle, Chicago, Carolina, the Giants, the Jets. They're all looking like they actually have a legitimate chance to make the playoffs. Like, I don't know what's happening. Obviously, the NFC, we all expect it to be bad, but to this degree where the Niners can look like a Super Bowl team one week and then a top 5 picking team the next. The Rams are just in shambles. The Bucs, they're in shambles. The Packers are in shambles without Devontae Adams. That's an absolute shocker. The Saints don't look as good as I thought they might. It's just a weird year. With that being said, man, let's go right into the NFC South odds here. Tampa Bay still sits as the favorite at -160, with Atlanta at +340, New Orleans at +500, Carolina +1200. Where are you going here? Because the winner of the Falcons-Panthers tomorrow are going to be sitting in sole possession of the NFC South. Right. Stop me if you had that on your bingo card this year, because I sure didn't.
Right. The Falcons win, they're in first place. If the Panthers win, it's a tie with the Bucs and the Panthers, I think, because the Bucs have the tiebreaker. Yeah, it's one of those weird situations. I just don't understand what is going on with this Bucs team. I still have them head and shoulders above everybody else in this division. They have the talent. They have Tom Brady. He's looked great all year, even though the team hasn't, besides this past Thursday night game. But Thursday night games are the weirdest thing in football. I think Thursday night games are weirder than 9:30 London games. It's just anything could happen. We've seen it in the past. And the Bucs just didn't have a good game, and I didn't expect them to. I was kind of being the optimist and picking them to win in a close 23-20 game. It ended up being 27-22, so it was 5-point difference. But if you look at the score and look at the way the teams played, it was not similar. So, I think the Bucs still turn this around and win this. They have a very tough opponent coming up next week in the Rams, even though they've had their own set of struggles, with their offensive line play and cornerback, other than Jalen Ramsey. But they still have Jalen Ramsey. They still have Aaron Donald. They still have Cooper Kupp. They still have really key pieces that can damage this Bucs team in specific areas where they've struggled. So I would like to say this mini bye helps them reset and they can turn it around. But they just lost Shaq Barrett for the year. That's going to be huge. And then right after this Rams game, which is at home for them, they play another home game in Germany before they finally have their bye. So, they have to win one of those games at least and bring their record up, to potentially 4-6 or hopefully, a 6-6 record there, or a 5-6 record there rather. And then go into that bye, reset, and come out and just be hot out the gate the rest of the season. Atlanta, still questions about Mariota and if they can get it done. Cordell Patterson should be back soon, which will be a big boost. Who's playing quarterback on any given Sunday for the Panthers? I don't know. Do you know? I mean, that could be a bet every week. And then same thing with the Saints, injuries galore to Michael Thomas, Jarvis Landry. Jameis Winston's been benched for Andy Dalton. That doesn't sound good. Oh, and they don't have a first-round pick because they traded away this year to the Eagles and part of that Chris Olave deal. So, that team's reeling. I think the Bucs are still set up for success for this year and potentially beyond if they get a quarterback. But, man, I think the theme of this show, especially in that NFC South, is just bad football. And all these teams are playing it. And it's going to be interesting to see how this continues to trend because all these teams don't really place, especially the other teams in the division, don't place teams that have winning records. There are only a few teams that they're facing that have winning records. So it's going to be interesting.
One thing that stands out to me this year, and I thought they would be able to overcome it. A lot of the injuries the Bucs suffered in the preseason, not having Bruce Arians, I thought would be an issue, but I was like, okay, it's the same system. Todd Bowles executed a fantastic defense last year. Leftwich, same thing with the offense. They're going to be able to overcome this. They have Tom Brady, consummate professional, arguably the best quarterback of all time. They'll be fine. They lost 3 games in a row for the first time, or Tom Brady's lost 3 games in a row for the first time since 2002. And what I'm not a fan of, I was not a fan of Bruce Arians getting run out of town, but I got to say, Tom Brady and the Bucs deserve this. Okay, and what I mean by run out of town, out of the head coaching job, I don't think got enough credit for what he was doing, holding the team together. When you have a lot of superstars and you have a lot of star power, I think it goes under the radar. And Mike Tomlin was the perfect example of managing Antonio Brown. What it takes as a coach, as a leader, to hold the locker room together, keep that team gelling. And I think that was a major flaw. And I thought, okay, the Buccaneers they're starting out slow. They're going to get it together. But I got to be honest, I don't love what I'm seeing. On top of the injuries that keep piling up, Tom Brady has a horrendous personal life right now that just seemingly gets worse, that he's not being able to play through. He's missing team practices to work on his marriage. He's flying to wherever Robert Kraft's wedding was so he can go be a part of that on a Friday, missing walkthrough. This is not something you see from Tom Brady. And I got to be honest, this is not something that would fly in the Bruce Arians regime. I'm worried about Tampa. I look at their schedule, man. They legitimately look like they have 5 losses on this, which would mean they cannot finish better than 7-10. The Rams, that could go either way. The Seahawks in Germany, they're playing really good football right now. That could go either way. The bye week, the Browns are set up with a formula that could beat. The Saints always play them tough. The Niners are tough. The Bengals are tough. The Cardinals, they would beat. Carolina, I think they would beat. Atlanta, I mean, you would think they beat them, but given what happened last time, you never know. And I got news for you. That Week 17 game I'm circling because if Carolina wins tomorrow, that Week 17 game might ultimately decide the division, as crazy as it sounds. I would think Tampa Bay still pulls this off, but, man, if they lose 5 games and can top out at 7-10, I just don't see that happening. I think 8-9 gets the NFC South this year.
Yeah, they can't. I would say they can't lose any more than 2 games really to put themselves in a good position. 7 losses is, that's 10-7. That's I don't know if they can lose 3. I don't know if they can lose 4 and still kind of come out of this division on top. It's going to be very, very difficult for them. They've got to turn around. And I completely agree with Bruce Arians. Bruce Arians was very hands off. He let Byron run the offense. He let Bowles run the defense. But you're right. He kept everything together. He was not afraid. And the whole wedding thing and days off, Bruce is one of the coaches, and he said it in the past before. Like, I don't want you to miss your kid's recital for practice, whatever. Talk to me. We'll work it out. Skip the practice and come in the next day. So he's given his players leeway in the past. And with that wedding, again, the whole situation, I think, is just such – look at what the Patriots did. They destroyed the Lions. And I know it's the Lions, but half of their team was at that wedding. So I don't know if you can blame the wedding. I just think that Bruce Arians would call players out. He wouldn't care. He does not care what your status is. He'll do it behind closed doors. He'll do it in the media. And that's not Todd Bowles' MO. He's not going to – I gave him a fair opportunity to call out Devin White yesterday. Fair opportunity. And he declined to. He wasn't going to do it. And Devin White was on roller skates. Tyler Lindenbaum, Isaiah Likely, 2 rookies just moving him all over the field, jogging in one play, loafing, as Todd Bowles called it. And I gave him a chance to call him out. And he said to pick on Devin White, I don't think it's fair to pick him, unnecessary to pick on him. It is, though. It is, really. I mean, he's been horrendous the last couple of games. Absolutely horrendous. Unplayable. Byron Leftwich, the play calling has been awful. Sequencing, especially awful. First down runs, not running the ball with the best players. Just a multitude of different things. Play calling and personnel wise out on the field on offense. And Bowles doesn't touch that. He lets Byron do his thing. But the biggest difference was BA there. Not afraid to call guys out. Not afraid to call them out publicly. Not afraid to let his voice be heard and really get after these guys. And I don't know if Bowles is doing that. He might be doing it behind the scenes, but obviously players aren't reacting to it. I asked him bluntly, are players still reacting to the coaches? And he says, yes. I haven't seen it.
So Devin White, real quick, it's not the fact that he didn't play well. It's the effort. Multiple plays, he just wasn't hustling. He took himself out of the play because he just was giving less than 10% effort. That's the problem, because he's ultimately one of the most talented linebackers in football. I have no question about that. Then you look at other stupid things like Tampa Bay with their nonstop penalties. K-Dot and touchdown gets erased. I mean, the game could be different against Baltimore had they not committed these egregious penalties, the holdings, getting themselves behind down and distance in the red zone. Like, that's a big difference, man. When you have like 1st and goal, 2nd and goal in the red zone at the 10-yard line, 9-yard line, you get a holding call or you get a false start, you're back 5-10 yards. That's a big difference, especially against a Ravens defense that, despite the loss of Wink Martindale, still knows how to play defense. You know what I mean? So Tampa Bay is shooting themselves in the foot in numerous ways, and Brady doesn't look good either. Like, he's missing open receivers like we've never seen before. Now, granted, Mike Evans against Carolina, that was one of the worst drops I've ever seen. That killed me in fantasy. That was like a 25-point play, neither here nor there. But Tampa Bay, man, one thing that worries me, Todd Bowles, to me, is not a head coach. He's shown he's showing the 3rd time that he's not a head coach. Or 2nd time, whatever.
A 3rd. He was interim in Miami, so.
Right. Okay. Yeah. He is a bridesmaid. He's not a bride. When he has to solely focus on defense, that's when he's at his best. He's a great defensive coach, great defensive mind. But even remember in Philly when he was the defensive coordinator, it was a failed experiment. There was a time when they brought on Nnamdi Asomugha, supposed to be the prized free agent acquisition of the century. Look how that turned out. He went into acting Nnamdi Asomugha shortly thereafter. So I think Bowles, he needs to get back to what he was doing last year with this defense. I just don't think head coaching is made for him. If you can't win in this division with this roster, one of the top 3 rosters, I think a top 3 roster in football with this quarterback, I don't know if you're ever going to win. So it's the onus falls on Tom Brady and company to clean it up, start executing, start giving full effort, stop with the stupid mistakes. And I think they could right the ship. It's not too late. But if they lose their next 2 games, which is very plausible, knocks them to 3-7, they better get down on hands and knees and start praying that they can make a run to right the ship in time, because even then it might be too late.
If they lose these next 2 games and end up 3-7, then I you just suck, man. Suck for Bryce Young or whoever the quarterback, Will Levis, whoever it is. Brady's probably gone next year anyways, regardless of whether they start losing games or not. But if you fall to 3-7, you might as well just start sucking your way to a franchise quarterback. Because the thing about this team too is when Brady came back, and it was under impression, year to year basis, probably his last year. He's got that big contract waiting for him at Fox. They still re-signed all their key players to 3-year deals. Chris Godwin, Carlton Davis, Leonard Fournette, Ryan Jensen, all these got Ryan Gage, free agent acquisition. They all got 3-year deals to set this team up. This team is set up with the talent and the personnel they have to be a legit contender for the next 2 or 3 years after Brady, at very least 2 years if they get the right quarterback there. I think coaching has a huge part to do with it. I think you're right. Execution, obviously, players got to execute. Like, even if the call is a shit call, you've got to execute that call. You've got to go out there and give it your best. And offensive line has been a struggle. They finally just made a switch from Luke Gedeke to Nick Leverett, and he was a beast pretty much throughout the entire game. He had let up Washington have one batted pass earlier in the game. The other two were on Robert Hainsey, and then he gave up a sack to Justin Houston in the fourth quarter. But that was his first and really only bad pass protection rep that he had out there. And even so, Brady held the ball for 4 seconds. You got to get rid of the ball, Tom. Seemed like, the coverage was good. These guys, the wide receivers aren't separating. Lenny looks like a different running back than he did. He's great out of the backfield catching it, but as a runner, he's been porous.
He looks slow, man. He
right.
looks slow. He looks like, and it's weird because week 1 he looked great. We're sitting here thinking, oh boy, this is going to be a 1,200 yard, 12 touchdown type of season for Lenny, chipping in probably 50 to 60 catches for another 500 yard and a few touchdowns. This looks like Lenny could be a top 5 fantasy RB, and the PPR is keeping him afloat and the touchdowns too. But God, this guy looks slow, and he's young, but for a running back, he's got miles on him. He's had a lot of carries in his career, even going back to college days. It's not looking good for Tampa. So that brings me to my next point here. Do you realistically think the Carolina Panthers could come in and win this division?
I don't. I don't see it. I know they're going to – the one thing about the Panthers right now is they have a new coach and Steve Wilkes, and I can see them playing better team ball because, honestly, they don't really have anyone on that team that's a superstar, especially in the offensive side. DJ Moore, for everything he is, he's also a very streaky player. They don't have a real quarterback. They don't have a great line. They don't have, established running backs. They don't have a good tight end, even though they paid him like he was one. On defense, it's a little different. They got Derek Brown up and coming. They got Brian Burns. They got J.C. Horn. They've got Jeremy Chin when he comes off IR. But this is a team that I think could put some wins together more than expected because I think they're going to play solid team football. But I don't see them as a division winner. I don't see them as a true contender for a Super Bowl or even a noisemaker really in the playoffs. I still think that the Bucs are the only team that makes only team that makes it out of this division in the playoffs. Just looking at the other teams around the league, you got to think someone in that NFC West is going to turn it around. You got to think that maybe the Packers turn it around. I don't know the sustainability of the Giants, and even the Cowboys make it in. They're the Cowboys. So
9 wins though, man. 9 wins might sneak you in a wild card spot. And with this NFC South, it might only take 8 wins.
Right, but I think the Bucs are first to 8 wins than I think anybody else. This team can't suck forever. It's got too much talent. There's too much talent, and there's too many guys who know how to play football at the highest level. There's too many guys on here who were one play away from hosting the NFC Championship. There's too many guys on this team that knows what it's like to win a Super Bowl. And, quite frankly, we're coming up on November, and November football is when Tom Brady's at his best and when he gets everybody else around him to play his best. Now, usually they're looking a lot better going into November when it comes to November football, but I still think they can turn it around. I still think, we'll see what Jason Light does before Tuesday. If he makes any moves to add to this roster, whether it be at edge rusher, wide receiver, offensive line, safety, defensive back, something like that. But I still think there's just way too many there's way too much talent for this team. And yeah, guys are banged up, but they haven't really lost anyone for the year, right? It's not a situation where Ryan Jensen could still come back. Logan Ryan's going to come back after his foot injury later in the year. You know, Antoine Winfield Jr. should be back. Carlton Davis could be back. Akeem Hicks could be back. Sean Murphy-Bunting, they could all be back for the Rams game. Russell Gage is still one of these question mark situations. When's he going to be back? He was inactive this week, but they haven't lost any huge piece of this team for the year that they can't get back and rewrite this ship. I don't know what the move is, and we've been discussing this over at Pewter Report for the last week or so. Like, what is the move? Is it fire Byron Leftwich? Even if you fire Byron Leftwich, who's going to be the guy that comes up and has a philosophical difference in play style and play calling that's going to make a huge difference with the playbook in hand? If you're not going to get rid of Bowles, I don't think. You should bench Gedeke and keep Leverett in there. They're definitely not going to bench Devin White, although I think they could benefit from him. But they have an undrafted free agent, Olakunle Fadokazi, who I think would just get torched just as well. At least White has a speed to make some plays. He's a 2-down thumper that's going to get exposed in coverage and exposed by running back. So, I just think this team has too much talent to fall to the wayside and not be in the conversation come late January, in the divisional round, potential in the NFC Championship round. They've got to get it together. I think they will. It's just how quickly, because it needs to be tomorrow. It can't be late. It can't be after Germany. They need to turn it up, and they need to do it against the Rams.
Listen, I agree. The Rams, even with all their woes, they played Tampa tough last year. I just want to play devil's advocate with the Panthers, right? I mean, they had a heartbreaker against the Giants and the Browns, 2 games they easily could have won, and their season's looking a whole lot different. They're 4-3 if both those games go their way. But they play the Falcons, the Bengals, the Falcons. They should have reasonably split with Atlanta. They're going to lose to the Bengals, lose to the Falcons. They're going to lose to the Ravens. I think they could beat Denver bye week. Seattle, I would say Seattle wins that. Pittsburgh, they could beat. The Lions, they could beat. They'll probably lose to Tampa the second time in Tampa, and New Orleans. So realistically, I think they could beat New Orleans the way they're playing right now, especially if the Saints are already out of it and then they mail it in by that point. So we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 potential wins. Maybe if they surprise us. I mean, that's 7 wins. They're pushing it, especially, who knows, man, if they end up beating Tampa Bay for an 8th win in the second time, which is highly unlikely, but still possible. Like I said, 8 wins it's not absurd. And the one thing that I think we need to recognize, Carolina for years has quietly built one of the best defenses in the last decade, quietly. Now, they have a top 10 unit when they're playing at best, maybe even top 8, as long as they don't trade Brian Burns. Even with dealing McCaffrey, they have a very capable back in Deontay Foreman. He's no McCaffrey, obviously, but he's a guy who we saw last week. He ran for 115 yards against Tampa Bay.
That was Tampa Bay's run defense has been terrible. Deontay Foreman has bounced around the league because he hasn't been able to put it together. I don't have faith in Deontay Foreman.
I agree, but the one thing that I wanted to make of note, the high variance of PJ Walker, should he remain the starter. He could be horrendous or he could be pretty good. That's good. I think is interesting about the Panthers. The variance of PJ Walker influence how Carolina plays. Now, we saw it against Tampa Bay last week. Now, if this guy is playing solid football, letting the defense do its thing, hold teams under 20 points, Foreman's halfway decent, DJ Moore gets re-involved in the offense. It's not likely, but it is possible. And it's so possible, in fact, that I had a little fun. I did a 3-team future division parlay where I took Seattle to win the West, the Bengals to win the AFC North, and the Panthers to win the South. 50 win 17K, by the way. Obviously, it's a super long shot, but having a little fun here. The main reason was because, like I said, if Tampa Bay doesn't figure it out and they lose 5 more games, they're, you could probably consider them out of it. The Saints, on the other hand, I mean, they have a tough schedule. Vegas, the Ravens, the Rams, the Niners, the Bucs, the Falcons, the Eagles, the Browns. Atlanta probably has the most favorable schedule. So, I mean, they get Carolina, the Chargers, who are a mess right now, Carolina, Chicago, Washington, Pittsburgh, the Saints, Ravens, Cardinals, Bucs. I feel like the Falcons are probably the most valuable bet at the moment, but I'm not sleeping on Carolina to make a run here. It sounds ridiculous. I truly don't think it's going to happen, but in case it does, I won't sit here at the beginning of January and act surprised. But I will act surprised if the Bucs don't get it together and win at least 9 games, because they're too talented to be just playing footsies with themselves. I don't really understand why they aren't getting it together. I do think ultimately that they will, but it's hard to watch right now, man. It really is.
You're telling me. I traveled up to Carolina to watch that game in the press box. I know it was awful. Like I said, if the Bucs can't get it together, it opens up the division completely. I mean, if they start dropping 2, 3 more games, 4 more games, then it opens up. And I think the Panthers, with their defense wins championships. We know that. They have the best defense in this division, I think, right now. The Saints are close. They have a really strong defense as well. But I don't know what the rest of the offenses suck for the other 3 teams. They've all got pieces, right? DJ Moore with the Panthers, Kyle Pitts, although he's been nothing really but a glorified blocker with the Falcons. And then you have Chris Olave and, the high variance play of Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara. They have the most playmakers on offense, but Andy Dalton's throwing them the ball. So there's points win the game, but you got to stop. So that's the thing.
One thing
the Bucs
that I
have
want
played so bad that they've let up the recent weeks and they haven't let up big points, but they've just let up points that they don't let up. They normally don't. They make those plays. If you watch that Thursday night game, that first half, the defense was awesome. I did them. Every week at Pewter Report, we do the game recap, most impressive, most disappointing. My most impressive list was 10 players and the defensive unit deep on third down defense. By the end of the game, I had deleted at least 4 or 5 of those because it just turned around. But that first half for the Bucs, they played really well on defense. They were getting after the quarterback. They were putting pressure on Lamar, containing Lamar. They were stopping him on third down, creating third and long situations where they shut them down. When they're coming into this game, where they're one of the worst teams in the league on third down on defense on third and long situations, and they turn it around. So they can play. They've showed that they can play that game. And even those first 2 drives, when they've got 2 scores, they've shown that they can play effectively, efficiently. They just can't put it together for 4 quarters. They can't put it together for a half, really, let alone 4 quarters. So just stupid mistakes, as you mentioned, penalties, taking away touchdowns, putting you in down and distance situations on third down and in red zone situations where you're in goal situation. And now you're at the 20-yard line because someone commits a penalty. And then special teams mistakes. You're trying to put this game away and you let them return it for 40 something yards. The blunder that happened between D. Delaney and Jalen Darden when they muffed the punt down in the red zone. You can't have those things happen, and the Bucs have just let those things happen all season long at an eye-opening and insanely frustrating clip.
Tampa Bay, and I've noticed this all year, their defense on paper has been good in terms of points per game and stuff like that. But as you alluded to, especially as of late, their defense, while it might not be allowing 30, 40 points outside Kansas City, they can't get off the field. The Steelers, they allowed, I think, five third downs of 10 or more. I was watching. I'm like, what is going on? What's happening? Carolina, same thing. Baltimore, in the second half, it was happening. But really,
27 minutes to 6 minutes or something like that.
But really where it stood out to me was in week 3 against the Packers. Everyone's like, oh, well, the defense wasn't the problem. They only allowed 14 points. I'm like, bro, the Packers had, I think, 3 or 4 drives of 10 plays, and it was consuming 6, 7, 8 minutes, and they just kept picking up third downs. And I got to be honest, if it wasn't for Vita Vea making an unbelievable play on Dylan or Jones, I don't remember who it was, on a hustle play, knocking the ball out at the goal line, the score looks a little bit different, that the Packers are scoring at least 20 points. But the one thing that I want to call out, like I was just alluding to, they have the Rams, Seahawks, bye week, Browns, Saints, Niners, Bengals. That is an extremely difficult run to go to. So in those 6 games, I would think if you don't win at least 3 of them, if you lose,
four.
Yeah, well, I'm saying at least 3, bare minimum, because then you hope you sweep the Cardinals, Panthers, Falcons to end out the season. But if you don't win at least 3 games, like if they go 2-4, they're done. They're done. Unless the rest of the NFC South historically collapses. But this is not the situation where if you're the Bucs that you're trying to get right. The bye week would have helped in week 9 for them to get right.
Would have helped like 2 weeks ago. That was supposed to be the soft spot. When you looked at the schedule, the Falcons, the Steelers, the Panthers, that was supposed to be your 3 layup wins.
Yeah.
That first week, 4-4. I mean, coming out of that first 4 games, 2-2, was expected by and large by many fans. And media. We didn't look at that like, oh, the Bucs will go 4-0 in that. But no, like those were some tough games. The Saints was a tough game. You lost to them 7 straight, and you're playing in New Orleans. The Packers, you've had their number as of late, but still a tough team with Aaron Rodgers leading it. The Chiefs are the Chiefs, and they want revenge for the Super Bowl. So, like, coming out of that stretch 2-2, losing the 2 at home was a bit alarming, but that was expected. And then you come into the Falcons, and you barely beat them. And if not for a roughing call, a controversial roughing call, Falcons probably would have got the ball back, and that could have been a different story, different outcome. And then the slide just falls. And then it's just, you're losing to the Pittsburgh Steelers. You're losing to the Carolina Panthers. Okay. You should win those 2 games. You should be going into this game against the Ravens, 5-2. And then the Ravens, it's a Thursday night game. The Ravens present a challenge. If you lose against the Ravens, that's one thing that the fan base can be like, okay, whatever, the Ravens present a tough team. Now you're 5-3 going against the Rams. Different story. You lose to the Rams, you're 5-4. You're still on pace to have a good season. Those 4 losses, it's just inexcusable to lose those games against teams that A, only had 1 win, and B, you should have won, and C, was your any given Sunday. The league's been bad, parity's been strong, but really, they dug themselves a hole because, as you mentioned, with this lineup right here coming up, especially after the bye week, that 4-game stretch of all difficult opponents or opponents you've struggled with, it doesn't get any easier for them. They need to be firing on all cylinders. They need to get back on what Bucs football is all about. And hopefully this weekend off to kind of refresh them, reset them, and just kind of heal up a little bit. They're going to get healthy. The Bucs haven't looked right since Logan Ryan left the game with that ankle injury. And then instead of placing him on IR right away, they waited 2 weeks to extend that situation. So he's going to be out 4 more weeks instead of just placing him on IR right away, which a lot of teams have been doing, which I don't understand. Jamar Chase, great. You think he'll be back in 4 games? Well, if he misses that 5th game, oh well, put him on IR now, because what if it's not? What if a week goes by and now you have to put him on IR? You just burned a week that you could have had him back. So, there's just situations like that I think Logan Ryan coming back, Antoine Winfield Jr. has been great in run support. Carlton Davis run support. Logan Ryan's been great in run support. They lost all 3 of those guys, and teams have been running on them like crazy. So, and Akeem Hicks, Vita Vea has been asked to do a lot more different stuff on the line than he's been asked to do in years past. It's just collectively players. You can't make the full excuse for injuries, but it has something to do with it. Although you look at last year when the secondary, they're pulling Pierre Desir off the street and they were still winning games. Richard Sherman, or what was Richard Sherman, was playing and they were still winning games. So it's easy to make excuses, but the reality of the situation is that they are not playing good football. These are guys who've been playing together for the last 2 years, and the chemistry's off, the communication's off, and technique and fundamentals has been terrible. That falls on coaching, and they got to turn it around. I don't know if they will. I hope they will. I think they will. But as we mentioned, they can't afford not to. Is the main focus of what we're talking about right now. They cannot afford not to.
I'm even looking at it like the Falcons game they could have lost had one of the worst roughing the passer calls not happened. The Saints game they should have lost in week 2. There was some really, really weird stuff.
You knew Jameis was going to be Jameis at one point.
Yeah, but that was kind of after the fact. But there was a lot of bad calls, especially when the Saints had a late lead. Ingram fumbles going in, and Brady they call a horrendous. What was it against the receiver? Unnecessary roughness, not pass interference. One of those calls that kept the drive going. So they easily could have dropped that one. They haven't played clean, good football once this year. Even the game against Dallas was a
red zone nightmare. Red zone nightmare.
It was a red zone. Mike Evans had to make an unbelievable catch just to score that touchdown. But I'm thinking that they should turn it around. But at the same time, man, we're 2 months into the season. When is this going to happen? If it doesn't happen next week against the Rams, now you have to go to Munich to place a red-hot Seattle team that is not laying down for anybody. No. And I don't know, man. It's not looking good. You don't want to lose to the Rams because that's a winnable matchup. This is not the same Rams team that won the Super Bowl last year. So if I was them, I would get it together. There's one thing I wanted to tell you. And I don't know if it has an impact. So I always had a problem with Tom Brady, but really after the whole retirement thing in January, and the reason why I knew this guy always has to make everything about him, he's just in crazy selfish, and you'll relate to this. When did that retirement leak happen? Do you remember the day?
It was the week before the Super Bowl, right? Was that?
Yeah, but more specifically, what day was it?
I couldn't tell you. January something.
Gasparilla. Now, why would a guy who's the reigning Super Bowl champion, even though he got eliminated, leak that Super Bowl retirement announcement on Tampa's national holiday? Who plays for the Bucs, I might add. Anybody who can see this could clearly say, this guy always wants it to be about him. He's always got to be the center of attention. He's always creating drama. And nobody could convince me otherwise that out of all days, out of the entire 365-day calendar, he chooses Tampa Bay's national holiday to break this. By the way, after that happened, the entire Gasparilla parade went into an uproar. At like 3:30 p.m., everybody's hammered. It's like, oh my God, Tom Brady's retiring. And like, meanwhile, I'm half in the bag having a good time. And that's all I have to listen to for the rest of the night. And from then on, I was like, all right, this guy's entirely selfish. That's why he doesn't want to be around his wife or his kids. And he takes the Fox deal for when his time's up, even though he's making a boatload of money. But at what point is enough where you want to be, home with your wife and kids? It's just that always stuck with me, and I'll never forget that.
Do you have a wife and kids?
I do not have a wife and kids.
Then at no point it's enough. No, I'm just kidding. I love my family, but stay here. Stay as long as you can. No, but no, I mean, I don't know. My heart breaks for him. Having to come home the last couple of weeks and not have your kids there is got to be extremely, extremely tough. And then you play in the weekend. So like, when do you get to see them? He probably won't get to really spend time with his kids until the bye week. And then after that, who knows, who knows how amicably this thing is going. So I don't know. My heart breaks for him. I think that, like I said, I think the team will be fine. They don't have a choice. That's why though. Like, we look at it, they don't have a choice. They have to win, because if not, then they're done. And when Tom Brady's back is in a corner, it's when he usually comes out swinging, guns a-blazing, and gets the job done better than anybody else we've ever seen in the NFL. So I think this is a perfect week. Bull's got to get that monkey up. The Saints, with the Saints, the team got the monkey off the back. Bull's got to get the monkey off the back with McVay because he's had his number, and this is another week to do it. And you got to think that the players had this week off. The coaches did not have this weekend off. You got to think they're getting back to basics, and instead of coming back on Tuesday like they're scheduled, they changed it to Monday. Players will be back earlier than when they were anticipated to come back, and they'll start their preparation for the Rams. And I think they have a good shot. At least they're at home too, even though they played terrible at home. But I think they played terrible everywhere. But I think they have a good shot at turning this around against the Rams, winning this game, going to Germany, keeping that momentum going, using that bye week to get healthy, and then same thing. I think they can get the job done in Cleveland without Deshaun Watson as well.
Well, so we hope, especially if Tom Brady could turn around for my fantasy team, because I stacked him with Mike Evans in a couple. So, that would be nice for a fantasy owner. But JC, always appreciate you coming on, man. Definitely looking forward to having you on. And when the season avails itself a little bit further, we can have more conversations on what went right for them to make this run that we're talking about, to make the playoffs, or what continued to go wrong where they're not in the playoffs. Tell everybody where they can find you.
Yeah, right below, right there. At JC Allen NFL is my Twitter handle. Follow me. I'm your one-stop shop for everything Bucs, whether it's the Bucs team, whether it's content from Pewter Report, content from PFF, all around the league. I got everything, plus my own thoughts and opinions, fun polls and all that stuff going on. So definitely check me out there. If you're a fan of football first, and not as well as a specific team, but fan of football first and want to just increase your knowledge about all the teams around the league, I'm the perfect guy to follow. And Pewter Report, that's where all my work is at, pewterreport.com. Pewter Report TV is where you can find all our podcasts. Tuesdays, I usually do a show called Touchback Tuesdays with current players on the team. Kind of chop it up. Last week I had Tristan Wirfs. It was a weird week with the whole short week situation, so I didn't have one this week. I'll be back at it next week. But Tristan Wirfs I had on. We did a fun draft of obviously we talked football, but at the end we did a fun draft of Marvel superheroes back and forth. I did it with Lenny last week, with the week before with Nintendo games, and it's a lot of fun. Breaks up. You get to see the players, not just as players, but also as people. So it's a lot of fun.
Well, JC, we love the work you're doing, man. Keep it going. Big fan. And thank you so much for coming on. Look forward to talking to you soon.
Absolutely. Talk to you.
That'll wrap it up for JohnnyVTV. Check us out on Wednesday when we have Taylor Mathis talking the best Week 9 NFL lines. See you next week.